My name is Sandra, and I'm 52 years old. I've been sitting in this kitchen for the past hour, staring at the phone that just delivered the most devastating words any mother could hear. 22 years ago, I held my newborn daughter, Madison, in my arms, promising her the world. Last night, she told me the best birthday gift I could give her was to die. As I sit here surrounded by the remnants of a birthday dinner she never showed up for, I realize something fundamental has shifted inside me. What happened next changed both our lives forever, and I'm finally ready to share this story because I know there are other parents out there who might be living the same nightmare. Before we dive into what happened, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop your location in the comments below, and if this story resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences. Now, let me take you back to where it all began because understanding how we got here is crucial to understanding what I had to do next. To truly understand the magnitude of what happened, you need to know who Madison and I used to be. When I gave birth to her at 30, I was already a divorced woman rebuilding my life from scratch. Her father had walked away when I was 6 months pregnant, leaving me with nothing but determination and an overwhelming love for the tiny life growing inside me. Those early years were a beautiful struggle. I worked 2 jobs while Madison slept, scraping together every dollar to give her opportunities I never had. I remember coming home exhausted from my evening shift at the hospital, only to find her awake in her crib arms, reaching for me with the purest smile. In those moments, every sacrifice felt worth it. When Madison was 5, she drew me a picture for Mother's Day. It was stick figures of us holding hands under a rainbow with the words, "Mommy is my hero," scrawled across the top in purple crayon. I hung that drawing in my office, and it stayed there for 17 years. Every time work got overwhelming or money got tight, I'd look at that picture and remember why I was fighting so hard. The sacrifices came naturally. When Madison turned 7 and wanted to attend Riverside Private Academy, I took on a third part-time job cleaning offices on weekends. When she showed talent for piano, I sold my grandmother's jewelry to buy her a decent instrument. Every choice I made revolved around one question: what would give Madison the best possible future? David entered our lives when Madison was 12. He was everything I dreamed of in a partner. Kind, stable, successful, and he genuinely cared about both of us. We dated for 2 years, and I was ready to say yes when he proposed. But Madison made it clear she didn't want a stepfather. "It's always been just us, Mom," she said with tears in her eyes. "Why do we need him?" So I chose my daughter over my own happiness, believing that's what good mothers do. My real estate career took off when Madison entered high school. Finally, the financial pressure eased and I could give her everything she wanted without working myself to exhaustion. I bought us a beautiful house in the suburbs, complete with the bedroom suite Madison had circled in a magazine. I established a college fund that would cover not just tuition, but living expenses at any university she chose. When acceptance letters arrived, Yale was her dream school. The cost was staggering, nearly $70,000 a year, but seeing her face light up when she opened that acceptance letter made every penny worth it. I was so proud watching her walk across the stage at graduation magna cum laude, ready to conquer the world. But something had already begun to change, though I didn't want to see it then. The phone calls from college were brief and always centered around money. "Mom, I need 500 for textbooks." "Mom, can you transfer 1,000 for this academic trip?" Never, "How are you?" or "I miss you." I told myself this was normal. College students are busy, independent. She was growing up, and that's what I'd raised her to do. Looking back now, I realize the warning signs were all there. But love makes us blind to what we don't want to see, and I loved my daughter more than life itself. Madison graduated from Yale on a perfect spring day in May. I sat in that enormous auditorium surrounded by proud families, watching my daughter receive her diploma in economics. My heart nearly burst with pride as she walked across that stage. This was the moment I'd been working toward for 22 years. At the reception afterward, I was eager to meet the friends she'd talked about in our rare conversations. When she introduced me to her roommate Emma and a few others, the words she used stopped me cold. "Everyone, this is Sandra, my financial sponsor." Not my mom or even my mother. Financial sponsor. Like I was some kind of scholarship program rather than the woman who'd given her life meaning. Her friends laughed politely, but I caught the look that passed between them. It was a look that said they'd heard about me before, probably not in flattering terms. I forced a smile and played along, telling myself Madison was just trying to sound sophisticated in front of her Ivy League peers. After graduation, Madison announced she wanted to move to New York City. I need to find myself before I jump into some corporate job, she explained. I want to explore my options, maybe try some creative pursuits. At 22, with a degree from Yale, she felt entitled to a period of self-discovery, and honestly, I understood that. I'd never had the luxury of finding myself. I'd gone straight from high school to work to marriage to motherhood. If I could give her the gift of time to figure out what she truly wanted, why wouldn't I? We found her a studio apartment in Manhattan's Upper East Side for $3,500 a month. It was tiny but trendy, the kind of place young professionals aspired to live. I set up automatic transfers for her rent and opened a checking account with a $1,000 monthly allowance for living expenses. On top of that, I gave her 3 credit cards with no preset spending limits, insisting she use them for anything she needed. This is temporary, she assured me, just until I figure out my next move, maybe 6 months tops. I believed her because I wanted to believe her. My successful, intelligent daughter just needed a little time to transition from academia to the real world. The first month's credit card bill arrived at $4,800. Restaurants, clothing, a weekend trip to the Hamptons with friends. When I gently questioned it, Madison's response surprised me with its sharpness. You told me not to worry about money. Now you're micromanaging my spending. Her tone carried an edge I'd never heard before, a coldness that made me step back. I'm not micromanaging, I said carefully. I just want to understand what you're spending on so I can budget appropriately. But even as I said it, I felt like I was the one being unreasonable. She was right. I had told her not to worry about money. Our conversations became increasingly tense whenever finances came up. Madison would accuse me of being controlling, of trying to manipulate her with money. You think because you pay for everything you get to control my life, she'd say. That's not how love works, Mom. But I wasn't trying to control her. I was trying to help her transition into independence gradually. At least that's what I told myself as I increased her monthly allowance to $1,500 and watched the credit card bills climb higher each month. The calls from her became purely transactional. Hi, Mom, can you transfer an extra $2,000 this month? My friend is having a birthday party in Miami, and I want to get her something special. No small talk, no asking about my day or my health. Just requests for money delivered with the assumption that I'd comply without question. My sister Linda warned me during one of our weekly phone calls. Sandra, you're creating a monster, she said bluntly. Madison needs to learn responsibility. But Linda didn't understand. She'd never been a single mother. She'd never had to be everything to someone else while being nothing to yourself. I convinced myself that Madison just needed more time. The job market was competitive. She was being selective, waiting for the right opportunity. These were the stories I told myself as month after month passed, with no signs of her seeking employment or even considering it. By fall, Madison's lifestyle had evolved into something I barely recognized. Her Instagram feed, which she'd made public against my advice, showcased a life of constant leisure and luxury. Designer brunches, shopping trips to Soho, weekends in the Hamptons with a crowd of young people who seemed to do nothing but spend money and take photos. The credit card bills had become genuinely frightening. $8,000 one month, $12,000 the next. When I called to discuss it, Madison had an answer for everything. You wanted me to have the best education, right? Well, now I'm getting a different kind of education. I'm learning about culture, about networking, about how successful people live. She'd found her tribe in Manhattan, a group of 20-somethings who called themselves lifestyle curators and seemed to treat every day like a photo shoot. Most of them had trust funds or parents who funded their endless pursuit of experiences. Madison fit right in, funded by a mother who worked 60-hour weeks to maintain her daughter's fantasy life. When I suggested she might want to start looking for work even part-time, the explosion was immediate and fierce. Work doing what, filing papers in some office? I didn't go to Yale to become some corporate drone. I'm building my personal brand right now. This is an investment in my future. Personal brand. The phrase made my stomach turn. Her personal brand consisted of posing with expensive cocktails and wearing clothes that cost more than most people made in a month. But when I tried to explain that real success required actual work, Madison accused me of being small-minded and jealous. You're just upset because you never had what I have, she said during one particularly heated phone call. You went straight from being poor to being a workaholic. You never learned how to actually live. Maybe if you had, you wouldn't be so bitter about me having experiences. Those words hit harder than she could have known. I wasn't bitter about her having experiences. I was exhausted from funding experiences that seemed to be turning her into someone I didn't recognize. But I didn't know how to say that without sounding exactly like what she was accusing me of being. The worst part was the distance. Not just physical distance, though. 300 miles felt like 3,000 when your daughter only called to ask for money. It was emotional distance. When I tried to share news about my own life, about work or friends or anything happening in my world, Madison would listen with obvious impatience before steering the conversation back to her needs. Mom, that's nice about your promotion, but can we talk about this Europe trip? Emma's parents are sending her to Paris for Fashion Week, and I don't want to miss out. Missing out. That phrase came up constantly. Missing out on trips, experiences, opportunities. As if saying no to any expense would somehow damage her permanently. I started lying to friends when they asked how Madison was doing. She's figuring things out, I'd say. Taking her time to find the right career path. It sounded so much better than she's spending my retirement fund on bottle service and designer handbags while treating me like an ATM. The breaking point came when Madison called to demand $15,000 for a 3-week trip to Europe with her friends, not ask, demand. When I hesitated, she didn't plead or explain why it was important. She went silent for 15 seconds, then said, "Fine, I guess I'll just tell everyone my mom is too cheap to let me have this opportunity. I'm sure they'll understand." The manipulation was so blatant, it took my breath away. This was my daughter, the little girl who used to leave thank you notes under my pillow when I bought her something special. Now she was threatening social embarrassment to extort money from me. I said no to the Europe trip. Madison didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. When she finally called, it was to inform me that she'd learned something important about who I could really count on. The message was clear. Love meant unlimited financial support, and anything less was betrayal. On my 52nd birthday, I woke up with the kind of hope that only a mother can understand. Despite everything that had happened over the past months, I convinced myself that Madison would remember. She might be going through a difficult phase, but surely she wouldn't forget her own mother's birthday. I spent the morning preparing her favorite meal, the same homemade lasagna I'd made for every birthday and celebration since she was old enough to eat solid food. I set the table for 2, bought a small cake from the bakery she used to love, and arranged fresh flowers in the vase she'd given me for Mother's Day years ago. Everything was ready for her arrival. By 3 in the afternoon, I started checking my phone obsessively. Maybe she was planning a surprise. Maybe she was stuck in traffic. Maybe she'd forgotten and would call any minute apologizing and promising to catch the next train home. I made excuses for her until the sun started setting and I could no longer pretend she was coming. At 7, I called her. The phone rang 4 times before she answered, and I could immediately hear loud music and laughter in the background. She was at a party. On my birthday, while I sat alone with a homemade dinner growing cold, she was out enjoying herself without a single thought of me. "What?" she answered, not even bothering with hello. Her voice had that particular quality it got when she'd been drinking slightly slurred and completely unconcerned with courtesy. "Hi, sweetie, it's Mom. I was wondering when you might be coming home for dinner. I made your favorite lasagna and I got a cake." I kept my voice light, hoping not to sound accusatory or needy, even though I felt both. "Coming home, why would I come home? I'm at Sophie's birthday party." The way she said it made it clear that Sophie's birthday was obviously more important than mine. Sophie, whoever she was, got a party with all of Madison's attention. I got a confused question about why I'd expect her presence. "It's my birthday, sweetie. I thought we could spend some time together, maybe catch up." I tried to keep the hurt out of my voice, but some of it leaked through despite my efforts. There was a pause and I heard her talking to someone else, her hand partially covering the phone. I caught fragments, my mom, and forgot, and someone laughing. Then she was back on the line and her voice carried a new level of irritation. "Oh God, you're so pathetic. Still trying to guilt trip me with food? What are you, 5 years old? Make yourself some friends instead of depending on me for entertainment." The cruelty in her voice was like a physical blow. This wasn't just selfishness or thoughtlessness. This was deliberate meanness designed to hurt. But even then, I tried to reach the daughter I remembered. "I just wanted to spend time with you. It's been so long since we've really talked and I miss you." My voice was smaller now, and I hated how desperate I sounded, but I couldn't help it. What came next destroyed something inside me that I didn't even know could be broken. You know what the best birthday gift you could give me would be? Just die already. Then I won't have to deal with your neediness anymore. Her voice was matter of fact, almost casual, like she was suggesting I change the channel. At least then I'd get your house and money without having to listen to you whining all the time. The silence that followed felt like falling off a cliff. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't process what I'd just heard. In the background, I could hear her friends laughing, and I realized with horror that she'd put the call on speaker. My most devastating moment was entertainment for a group of strangers. Someone in the background said, "Madison, you're terrible, but they were all still laughing. My pain was a joke to them, and my daughter was the comedian delivering the punchline. I hung up without saying another word. I sat in my kitchen surrounded by the birthday dinner. No one had come to eat, staring at my phone like it was a weapon that had just gone off in my hands. 22 years of love, sacrifice, and devotion had been reduced to a death wish delivered for the amusement of strangers. But here's what surprised me most: I didn't cry. Instead, I felt something I'd never experienced before: a cold, clear certainty that everything was about to change. My daughter had just told me exactly what she thought of me, and for the first time in years, I was going to listen. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table with a legal pad and a calculator making lists. For the first time in Madison's adult life, I was approaching our relationship like the business transaction she'd turned it into. Monthly apartment rent, $3,500, car payment and insurance, $800, health insurance premium, $450, phone plan, $150, monthly allowance, $1,500, credit cards, 3 cards with no spending limits averaging $10,000 per month. Emergency fund account with access for Madison, $50,000. As I wrote down each number, I calculated how much of my life I'd spent working to pay for it. The rent alone required 60 hours of work per month at my current billing rate. The credit cards represented another 160 hours. I was working 220 hours every month just to fund Madison's lifestyle, not including my own living expenses. At 8 a.m. sharp, I started making phone calls. First, I called my bank and requested to speak with the manager. "I need to remove someone from all my accounts and close any accounts in their name," I said calmly. Within an hour, Madison's access to the emergency fund was terminated, her checking account closed, and her name removed from every account that bore it. The credit card companies were next. 3 different calls, 3 different explanations of, "I need to cancel all cards associated with this account immediately." The representatives were efficient and professional, asking only for verification of my identity before terminating Madison's spending power with the click of a button. The apartment complex proved slightly more complicated, but not much. As the leaseholder, I had the right to terminate with 60 days' notice. "I'll be ending the lease on apartment 4B effective December 1st. I informed the leasing manager. "Please send the final statement to my address." Car insurance and the vehicle loan followed the same pattern. Since everything was in my name with Madison listed only as a driver, canceling her coverage and arranging for vehicle repossession was a matter of paperwork and scheduling. The health insurance company required only a brief explanation that I was removing a dependent from my policy. "Effective immediately," I specified. "Please send confirmation in writing." With each phone call, I felt something lifting from my shoulders. For years, I'd been carrying the weight of Madison's entire existence, and I was finally setting it down. Not out of anger, but out of a crystal clear understanding that I'd been enabling someone who viewed me as nothing more than a funding source. The most satisfying call was to my phone carrier. "I'd like to remove a line from my family plan," I said, the number ending in 7842. Madison's phone would stop working by midnight, cutting off her primary means of demanding money from me. As I made each call, I documented everything: names of representatives, confirmation numbers, effective dates. If Madison tried to claim I'd acted illegally or impulsively, I'd have a paper trail showing that every action was deliberate and properly executed. By noon, it was finished. Madison's entire support system had been dismantled in 4 hours of phone calls. She didn't know it yet, but her life as she knew it had just ended. And for the first time in months, I felt peace. I didn't call her to explain. I didn't send a text with an ultimatum or a list of conditions for reinstatement. Madison had made it clear that she wanted me dead so she could inherit my money. Instead of dying, I was simply removing myself from the equation. She was about to get exactly what she'd asked for: a life without my neediness getting in the way of her happiness. The anticipation was strange. I knew the explosion was coming, knew that within days, Madison would discover her new reality and the phone would ring with her fury. But I also knew that for the first time in our relationship, I held all the power. She'd trained me to fear her anger, her disappointment, her threats of withdrawal. Now I was curious to see what she'd do when none of those weapons worked anymore. That evening, I cooked dinner for one. I ate at the kitchen table, reading a book I'd been too busy to finish for months. The silence in the house felt different now. Not lonely, but peaceful. It was the sound of a woman who'd finally stopped setting herself on fire to keep someone else warm. For 2 days, my phone was blissfully quiet. I went to work, came home, and enjoyed the simple pleasure of not wondering what crisis or demand would come through my phone next. I caught up on Netflix shows, read 3 chapters of a novel, and slept better than I had in months. On the third day, Wednesday afternoon, the piece ended. My phone rang at 2:47 p.m. while I was reviewing contracts in my office. Madison's name appeared on the screen, and I let it ring 3 times before answering with a simple hello. Mom, thank God you answered. There's something wrong with my credit card. I tried to pay for groceries at Whole Foods, and it was declined. Then I tried the other 2 cards, and they're all saying the same thing. Can you call the companies and find out what's happening? Her voice carried the particular tension of someone who'd been publicly embarrassed and was looking for someone else to fix it immediately. I could picture her standing in the grocery store, probably with a cart full of expensive organic items, facing the horrifying reality that her unlimited spending power had vanished. There's nothing wrong with the cards, Madison. I canceled them. I kept my voice level and matter of fact, the way I'd speak to any client discussing a terminated contract. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. When she spoke again, her voice was higher, more strained. What do you mean you canceled them? You can't just cancel my credit cards. Actually, I can. And I did. I also closed your checking account, terminated your lease, canceled your car insurance, removed you from my health plan, and disconnected your phone service. Although obviously the phone cancellation hasn't taken effect yet since you're calling me. Another silence, longer this time. I could almost hear her brain trying to process what I'd said. When she spoke again, the entitled confusion had transformed into something closer to panic. This is insane. You can't just cut me off like this. I'm your daughter. You can't leave me homeless and broke. I'll sue you for abandonment or something. This has to be illegal. Madison, you're 22 years old. I have no legal obligation to support you financially. And before you threaten to sue me, remember that everything was in my name. You have no legal claim to any of it. I paused, letting that sink in. You told me the best gift I could give you was to die. I decided to give you something else instead. Independence. I didn't mean that I was drunk. You can't destroy my life because of something I said when I was drinking. Now she was shouting, her voice cracking with desperation. But you did say it, and your friends laughed, which tells me this isn't the first time you've talked about me that way. I kept my voice calm, almost gentle. Madison, I spent 22 years giving you everything I had. Time, money, opportunities, love, and you told me I should die so you could have my stuff without dealing with me. So I'm giving you what you wanted, a life where you don't have to deal with me or my neediness. Mom, please, I'm sorry. I really am. I was being stupid and mean, and I know that. But you can't punish me this way. What am I supposed to do? I don't have any money. I can't pay my rent. I'll be on the street. For just a moment, hearing the fear in her voice, I wavered. Every instinct I'd developed over 22 years of motherhood screamed at me to fix this, to rescue her, to make it all better. But then I remembered sitting alone on my birthday listening to strangers laugh at my pain. You'll figure it out, I said quietly. You're intelligent, educated, and capable. You just never had to prove it before because I was always there to solve your problems. Now you get the chance to solve them yourself. This is crazy. I can't just get a job and support myself overnight. I've never had to do that before. I know, that's the problem. I should have taught you responsibility years ago, but I thought I was showing love by giving you everything you wanted. I was wrong. The conversation continued for another 20 minutes with Madison cycling through anger, bargaining, and threats. She promised to get a job immediately if I'd just restore her funding temporarily. She threatened to never speak to me again if I didn't reverse my decision. She even tried tears, sobbing into the phone about how scared and alone she felt. Through it all, I remained calm, not cold but resolved. Every argument she made only reinforced my certainty that this was necessary. At 22, she'd never held a job, never paid a bill, never faced a single real consequence for her choices. I'd created that situation by trying to spare her every difficulty I'd faced at her age. "I love you, Madison," I said finally. "That's why I'm doing this. Real love sometimes means letting people struggle so they can grow. If you loved me, you wouldn't destroy my life like this." "Your life isn't destroyed. It's just beginning. For the first time, you get to build something that's actually yours, not something I handed to you." I paused. "When you're ready to have a relationship based on something other than money, call me. But understand that the bank of mom is permanently closed." I hung up before she could respond. Within an hour, she was at my front door. I watched through the window as she pounded on the door, shouting for me to let her in. She looked desperate and furious, her hair disheveled and her face red with crying and anger. "Mom, open this door right now. We need to talk about this face to face." I waited until she exhausted herself, then opened the door calmly. She immediately tried to push past me into the house, but I blocked her path. "You can't just cut me off like this," she said, her voice hoarse from shouting. "I'm your daughter. This is insane." "Madison, everything I told you on the phone is final. Nothing you say is going to change my decision." "But I don't know how to live without help. I've never had to pay my own bills or find my own place. You're throwing me into the deep end without teaching me how to swim." "You're right. I failed to teach you those things when I should have. But you're intelligent and educated. You'll learn faster than you think when you have to." She tried every approach she could think of. She apologized profusely for her birthday call. She promised to get therapy to work on her attitude. She offered to move back home and live by my rules. She even admitted that she'd been talking badly about me to her friends for months, calling me pathetic and desperate behind my back. That last admission confirmed what I'd suspected but hadn't wanted to believe. The cruelty of her birthday call hadn't been an isolated incident born of alcohol and poor judgment. It had been the culmination of months of disrespect and contempt that she'd been sharing with others for entertainment. "I'm glad you're being honest," I told her. "It helps me know I'm making the right decision." When she realized that nothing she said would change my mind, she shifted tactics entirely. The tears stopped and her face hardened into an expression I'd never seen before. "Fine, you want to play hardball? I know people who can make your life very difficult. I have friends with connections and I will use them. You think you can just throw me away after 22 years? We'll see about that. Madison, you're welcome to try whatever you think will work. But understand that every threat you make, every nasty thing you say, every attempt to manipulate or punish me just confirms that I made the right choice." She stormed off, shouting over her shoulder that I'd regret this decision for the rest of my life. As I watched her walk away, I realized something profound had happened. For the first time in our relationship, I wasn't afraid of her anger. I wasn't scrambling to fix things or make peace. I was just sorry that it had taken me so long to find the courage to let her face the natural consequences of her choices. The weeks that followed brought a mixture of relief, doubt, and unexpected discovery. My phone, once constantly buzzing with Madison's demands and emergencies, fell silent. My credit card statements arrived showing only my own modest purchases. My bank account for the first time in years grew instead of shrinking, but the silence also brought moments of crushing doubt. Had I been too harsh? Was I destroying a relationship that could have been repaired through conversation and patience? During sleepless nights, I'd replay our last conversation, wondering if I should call and offer some middle ground. It was during one of these dark nights that I finally called Dr. Martinez, a therapist my friend Carol had recommended months earlier. "I've made a decision about my daughter that feels both absolutely right and absolutely terrible," I told her during our first session. "I need to understand whether I'm helping her grow or just punishing her out of hurt." Dr. Martinez listened to the whole story without judgment, asking careful questions about patterns and history rather than focusing on the dramatic birthday incident. "Sandra," she said finally, "what you're describing isn't punishment. It's natural consequences. The question is whether you can live with the discomfort of watching someone you love struggle when you have the power to rescue them. But what if she ends up homeless? What if she can't figure it out and something terrible happens to her? What message did you send her by always preventing struggle?" Dr. Martinez asked gently. That she was incapable of handling difficulty. that love means never having to face consequences, that other people exist to solve her problems. Those sessions became a lifeline as I navigated the most difficult period of my parenting life. I learned words for what had happened, enabling codependency emotional manipulation. I began to understand that my desire to spare Madison every difficulty had actually weakened her, like never allowing a muscle to bear weight. Meanwhile, I started rediscovering who I was beyond Madison's needs. I redecorated the house according to my own taste instead of hers. I signed up for a pottery class I'd been interested in for years. I even reached out to David, the man I'd let go because Madison disapproved. "I wondered if I'd ever hear from you again," he said when I called. We met for coffee, and I found myself telling him the whole story. Instead of judging my decision as too harsh, he admired my courage. "Sandra, I watched you disappear into that relationship with Madison," he said. "You stopped having opinions about anything that might conflict with what she wanted. I'm proud of you for finding your way back to yourself." Through my grandmother, I heard fragments of Madison's new reality. She'd been forced to move back to our small hometown when she couldn't afford Manhattan without my support. She was living in a tiny apartment above the local diner where she'd gotten her first job ever, working the breakfast shift for minimum wage plus tips. "She's struggling," my grandmother reported during one of our weekly calls, "but she's not asking me for money," which surprised me. "She seems to understand that she needs to figure this out herself. Let her succeed on her own," she advised. "Right now, any help from you would feel like manipulation to her and enable dependency for you. She needs to prove to herself that she can survive and thrive without your money. You need to prove to yourself that you can love her without controlling or rescuing her." 6 months after our last conversation, an envelope arrived in my mailbox with my name written in Madison's careful handwriting. Not a text, not an email, but an actual handwritten letter. I stared at it for an hour before opening it, terrified of what I might find inside. "Mom," it began, "I know I have no right to expect you to read this given how horribly I treated you, but I wanted you to know that I understand now what you were trying to teach me." The letter went on for 3 pages. She wrote about the shock of her first day at work, how her hands blistered from carrying heavy plates, and how exhausted she felt after an 8-hour shift. She wrote about learning to budget, about the satisfaction of paying her own rent with money she'd earned. She wrote about apologizing to our grandmother for years of taking her kindness for granted. "I realize now that I never respected you because I never had to earn anything from you," she wrote. "Everything just appeared whenever I wanted it, so I started thinking I deserved it rather than being grateful for it. I thought you owed me the life I wanted instead of understanding that you were giving me a gift." Most importantly, she wrote about our relationship. "I know I can't undo the things I said or the way I treated you, but I want you to know that I'm becoming someone you might actually want to have a relationship with. Not because I need your money, but because I miss having a mom." The letter ended with no requests, no demands, no timeline for reconciliation. Just, "I love you, and I'm sorry it took me so long to grow up enough to deserve your love in return." I cried for an hour after reading it. Not tears of sadness, but tears of relief and hope. My daughter was finding her way back to herself and maybe eventually back to me. I didn't respond immediately. After talking with Dr. Martinez, I sent a brief note. "I'm proud of you for the work you're doing. Keep growing." It wasn't a restoration of our old relationship because our old relationship had been broken. But it was the first brick in the foundation of something new, something built on mutual respect instead of financial dependency. A year later, Madison called to tell me she'd been promoted to assistant manager at the diner and had enrolled in night classes at the community college. "I want to earn my way back into your life," she said, "not with promises, but with actions over time." And slowly, carefully, we began to build something neither of us had ever had before, a relationship between 2 adults who chose to love each other rather than one who demanded and one who provided. The hardest lesson I learned was that real love sometimes looks like cruelty from the outside. But when someone shows you who they are, you have to believe them. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let them face the consequences of their choices until they decide to become someone different. Madison had to lose everything to realize she'd never actually had anything real. I had to risk losing her to discover that love without respect isn't really love at all. Today, our relationship is smaller but stronger. We talk once a week, and every conversation feels chosen rather than obligated. She tells me about her job, her classes, her small victories, and daily challenges. I share my life too, not just existing as her support system, but as a person with my own dreams and struggles. The best gift I gave her wasn't my death, as she once cruelly suggested. It was the chance to discover that she could live her own life, build her own success, and earn her own self respect. And the best gift I gave myself was learning that being a good mother doesn't mean being an endless source of rescue and funding. Sometimes the hardest part of loving someone is knowing when to let go. But when you finally find the courage to stop enabling and start empowering you, discover that real love was always supposed to build people up, not hold them down. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever found yourself in a relationship where love felt more like obligation? Have you had to make the difficult choice between helping someone and letting them help themselves? Share your stories in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more real-life experiences about the complicated journey of family relationships. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message about the difference between love and enabling, please share this video with them. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is trust someone enough to let them figure out their own life. Until next time, take care of yourselves and the people you love, even when love means stepping back instead of stepping in.